Hi, and thank you for joining me today in the Salesforce Live studio. My name is Jake Schmidt. I'm a marketing manager here at Salesforce.com. I'm joined today with Koka Sexton from LinkedIn. He manages social and marketing content for the network that has over 238 million users worldwide. We all know LinkedIn very well. Also, I'm joined with Marissa Crater. She's going to be actually fielding your questions from the field today. Marissa, do you want to let everyone know how they can join in on the conversation?
Yeah, everyone can just use hashtag Salesforce Live in Twitter, or there's a social stream right at the side of their page if they're watching online, so they can just type them in there. We'll be checking them out. We'll be getting your questions to Koka.
Awesome.
Yeah, it'll be great.
Well, so as this is a social broadcast, we'd love for you to be engaged. So use that hashtag Salesforce Live and we'll definitely get to you during the program. So Koka, I'm especially excited to have you here with me today because I can't even imagine what it must be like for someone with your personality and your following and your just awesomeness. How do you approach Dreamforce? How do you do this? What is day one for Koka Sexton?
Well, I first approach this like it's a big, like you were saying, like it's a big playground. Like I look at this as like it's almost my Disneyland.
Yeah.
You know, as I'm getting prepped for it, I mean, there's obviously a lot of work that goes into it. Working at LinkedIn, there's a lot of stuff that you need to do ahead of time to kind of make sure that things are set up correctly. But for me, this is like just a massive networking event. And you know, one of the greatest things that I've been able to do in my career is, you know, connect with professionals all over the place. Mm-hmm. And you know, the Salesforce ecosystem is so strong and it's such great people that you know, I come here to actually meet face to face with many of these people who I just have virtual relationships with.
Great. Well, I'm definitely going to be picking your brain during the next 10 minutes, and I'm sure everyone else is out there is going to want to know as well. So today we're really going to talk about your top tips and your top ideas for turning social networking into social selling. How do we turn the tweets and the posts and the engagement into dollars? Before we do that, I really want to get a baseline for our crowd and our audience with, what's your definition of the social sales person? Who is this guy? Who is this girl that defines themselves in a social selling way?
So, you know, there's lots of definitions, and I think that, you know, when it boils down to it, social selling, a social salesperson is somebody who leverages their own brand and leverages social networks to gather insights, to build connections, and to leverage those connections to get business done.
Excellent. So, you know, we had a webcast over 3 weeks ago, and something that you brought up, which I think would be a great baseline for our crowd, is you use this phrase, resume to reputation. Do you think you could expand a little bit on that? You know, it's great background. It seems like a great base for our...
Yeah, and I love talking about resume to reputation. You know, it was developed internally by one of our sales leaders, Dan Swift, and it's really about, you know, most people think of their LinkedIn profile as a resume. It's very inward facing, it's about me, me, me. And what we have found, and what we know to be true just based on research and our own data, that when you turn your LinkedIn profile into an outward facing, customer facing page, you get a lot more engagement, people feel you're welcoming, you start turning yourself into a resource, and you start building that personal brand. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, we're transforming the world around, especially within LinkedIn.
Yeah, excellent. You know, and I think you're starting to touch on my next question, which is, we are constantly engaging with our base. We are hitting them with grandma's birthday, our firstborn kid, and then we're coming at them with, you know, we closed the big deal, or we're announcing this new product. So we're really hitting a wide range of, you know, personal, and then on the other side of the spectrum, you know, we could be hitting too much on the business side. So my question to you is, how do you manage what you're putting out there? Where do you draw the line between being too personal or too business-like?
You know, I think it really comes down to the whole idea that you are constantly in the frame of mind where you're educating your connections. I mean, when you look at Twitter, I mean, you can connect with everybody. I mean, we're talking to everyone from, you know, the Kardashians of the world to the SF Giants at their stadium, and everywhere in between. You know, and then Facebook is very about my family and like my very personal connections, and then there's LinkedIn. And when I think of social selling, what social network that is, it's on LinkedIn. So, you know, when you start talking about how do you know, post your updates, it really comes around, you know, how are you educating your marketplace, not around your industry, around your product, and about, you know, the things that are going to be interesting to the people within that professional context. And it's okay to sprinkle some personal stuff in there.
Right.
And I think that's the important thing, is that people don't buy, you know, people buy from people, but people don't buy from robots. And if all you're doing is constantly pushing out updates, regardless of the social network, saying, buy from me, download this, do that, you know, people are going to turn you off. And when you start turning it into a conversation, you start finding ways to engage that network, you start realizing that there's a lot more value to be had.
Excellent. It looks like Marissa might have a question for us from the social stream.
Yeah, we do. We have a lot of people excited that you're here. You do have a big personality on social media. And Shivanath wants to know, how deep is Salesforce integrated with LinkedIn?
So within Salesforce, the division that I work with in LinkedIn, it's the Sales Solutions Group. So we have LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And what we've really done is we've found a way with best practices to basically create a platform for salespeople to be more efficient. So we all know that salespeople use LinkedIn, but how do we leverage the best practices and build it within a platform that salespeople can be very effective with? And we've taken that and we've built it within the Salesforce ecosystem, so that salespeople can now leverage hidden connections and a lot more connections using features like Team Link to find out how to leverage those connections to get into the prospects they're trying to get into.
Once again, I think it's just having the more weapons in your arsenal, and Salesforce and LinkedIn are super complementary in that fashion. Getting back to what we were talking about a second ago, you started to mention other mediums, and obviously no one just sticks to one social media avenue. I mean, we are all hitting on Facebook, we're all hitting Twitter, we're all on LinkedIn, most of us are on Instagram now. What would be your suggestion for, and you started to touch on this already, but how would you suggest to take certain kinds of engagements with those mediums?
So I think that it's important, especially within the context of a salesperson. It's rare for me to ever meet a salesperson who isn't on LinkedIn, but it's I immediately ask them, so are you on Twitter also? And I think that the two play very well together, because Twitter's a very good broadcast mechanism. As I mentioned before, it's a very good way to have these quick little conversations back and forth through text messages. But I think it always comes back to LinkedIn. So I think that salespeople need to learn to leverage both. And even within Twitter, one of the best practices we're finding is that you have the ability to put in a URL within your Twitter profile. And we're finding that salespeople or just business professionals, they link to their LinkedIn profile, and there's a lot of value you can get from that, because the more conversations, the bigger your brand gets on Twitter, people are clicking that link to your LinkedIn profile, and then you can go into who's viewed my profile, and you can start seeing the people who are actually visiting your profile on LinkedIn and finding ways to engage with them.
So expand that web, be hitting everybody. I like it. I mean, that's a pretty solid answer. The million-dollar question that I'm sure everybody has, and I alluded to it in the beginning of the conversation, how do I turn this engagement into cold hard cash? How do I get that money in my pocket?
So I think it's important on two levels. So one of the things that we're doing is we're elevating the role of salesperson. We're trying to, within LinkedIn Sales Solutions, we're trying to eliminate the cold call. So one of the ways that we find that to be most valuable is for salespeople to start leveraging their networks in a way that they never have before. You have all these great connections. You're connecting with past work associates. You're connecting with your customers. Start engaging them. Start going within the platform, mentioning them, sharing things with them, commenting on things that they're posting, and you start realizing that it starts creating like this magnet towards yourself. And I think that as salespeople continue to do this and start building that your own brand, the company continues to benefit from it as well. And when marketing, and on the other side, so when you talk about your sales and marketing alignment, when marketing starts getting involved in this and feeding information to the salespeople, which they should be doing now, but I see all the time that they're not doing it very effectively, where marketing is then feeding information to salespeople, saying, here's the information that we want you to spread, and we start seeing that actually has an uptick, and you can actually track the ROI financially within that.
Excellent. You mentioned the word magnet, and I think of you as somewhat of a social magnet. You're all over the place, you have tons of followers, you have such clout in this world. What was your aha moment? When did you realize that you were putting out valuable information and people were receiving it and taking it and engaging with it? When did that happen for you?
It was maybe 4 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, but I think what happened was I've always been kind of a geek at heart, and I've always wanted to be like an early adopter in social media in some way. And I was playing around in Twitter. I was one of those guys that was initially taking pictures of my lunch, but then I realized there's got to be a business value to this. And I was on LinkedIn, and I found a way to measure the amount of people that I was connected with on Twitter and my LinkedIn connections. Okay. And that aha moment was when I realized that I had prospects, business people, professionals that I was doing, talking with and having conversations with on LinkedIn, that I could now follow their social streams in other venues. And when that happened, I realized this guy is running, he's running a triathlon. That's the moment that when I'm talking to him, I can bring that stuff up. Because as a salesperson, we rarely have the opportunity to go into the office and actually see the things that are happening, see the rewards on the wall, the pictures on their desk. And leveraging social media across different platforms gives you that visibility. And I think that was my aha moment when I realized that I can create that 360 view within a social network.
Excellent. So I can't leave here without asking you this. it's the elephant in the room. We're at Dreamforce. There's 100,000 people out here with the same interests. It's absolutely incredible. I want to build my social brand. I want to take this week and really use it to boost my 200 Twitter followers up. And I want to get them to be quality, and I want them to be the right people. What's your recommendation to me? How do I go out there? How do I turn this handshake into, some social following, some social base?
So I think the best thing for you to do, my own thought on this, is start finding ways to connect with them. Start engaging with the people who are spending time talking about Dreamforce, the ones that are going to talk about the session. Start connecting with them, and you start realizing that because they're gravitating to you, that the information you're going to be spreading is already going to be of value to them. And the more you engage with them, the more they're going to want to share it, and the bigger your brand is going to get.
Okay, so less lunch, more education.
Yes, less lunch.
All right, fewer lunches. Marissa, before we end the conversation, I want to reach back out to you. It looks like you might have one more question from our social stream.
Yeah, we do. We have a specific question from Kurt Shaver, and he wants to know, how are companies balancing corporate control with individual freedom of social?
It's a great question. I think that progressive companies, it always comes down to a social media policy across your company, and every company is going to be a little bit different. So I think what's very important for companies to realize is that you have to put a policy in place. Your employees are already on social. It's just a matter of finding a way to make it so that it's a lot better for them to leverage it.
Excellent. And you know what, guys? That brings us to the end of the conversation. Koka, I want to thank you so much. We just covered a huge world of information in 10 minutes, so thank you for bearing with me there. Marissa, thanks a ton for jumping in with me. Once again, my name is Jake Schmidt. This is Koka Sexton, and I want to thank you for joining us at this Salesforce Live session.